Hello everyone, a bit of a different video today where I ask you for some advice, information, given that I've received, actually, from some time now. I can't really track it to the point, but whenever the channel intensified its traffic, many requests for myself to upload this stuff in podcast format on some, in fact, podcast site and application. And this is an important request because I realized many of you had this, not just a wish or a dream, like it was like almost a pressuring question, which I understand because I know how important podcasts are today, especially how how popular they are among especially the younger, and especially on sites like Spotify, in fact, that I already downloaded with as a program, and that I haven't installed, though haven't connected to it, and that yet I think is here the best option as far as I've understood. So in this video I would like to start a contest, say, among you, for the best answer that I can receive. So essentially I will now explain you what I need to know. So I also pray you to stick to my guidelines, because otherwise you can't quite compete in that contest successfully. That is to say, that you would have to answer whatever you feel like. If you have any interest for me doing this, if you have an experience of it, and as a motivation, if you care, I can essentially elect a best answer, and the author of this answer will get to talk privately with me about this thing. And I know it's not like that I am a celebrity or that you care more than much about this thing. I have doubts regarding this podcast thing, meaning that I know it's profitable and I know I should do it. It's just I would like to get certain things right from the very first beginning, because I need to be independent in this. And obviously you're not in the measure in which, I don't know, I depend on YouTube regarding this material. I'm saving the videos I'm making. As you know, I've been also kind of restructuring the channel recently for other issues, and I will address this too now because it's part of the deal, because it made me reflect in general about the whole thing. And I think that podcasting is something slightly different. That is to say, it's not much depending on a platform. It is about depending on somebody essentially sending in circle in the world your own content, and therefore you first paying in order to, as a service first, before eventually cashing on your own. And cashing is not my first objective as such, but it's obvious that equates to how more people listen to you. And if I'm forced to pay in turn in order to launch this at the beginning, I want to be sure that the thing is gonna lead me anywhere. In the first place, with YouTube, I didn't have this problem because YouTube has always been this. It's completely free. You just upload stuff, and if you get enough views, watch length, and all this stuff, you get paid, as I'm being at this point. But my first concern is of much grander scale, right? I'm a perfect capitalist, so I don't frankly care much about any moral consideration. I think it's all one. It's about the motivation why I do it in the first place, why I talk history, why I think these things are important, and all the things that every once in a while I explain or I annoy you subtly and subliminally in all my videos, one or another. So yes, I'll tell you that few that I know about this, which I already did, right? That's the problem. I would go for Spotify because I know it's essentially the most successful podcast platform, and apparently it's the quickest one, at least the one that would make me fish in a broader net, right? And I understand this is important. What I would like, the people I would like to answer me would be the ones that have an actual, if not an actual podcasting experience as podcasters themselves, but at least that know very well how these mechanisms work. Can be just by direct experience. You don't have to be the software engineer that programmed the algorithms or anything. Also, because you cannot be that certain things cannot be predicted. I'm aware enough on the fact that I cannot, like, just for YouTube. And part of the reason why I started, of course, was the curiosity of saying, how does this work in the first place? Is it profitable or not? I wouldn't know that. And I know it takes a lot of hard work. In my case now, I have put out, I think, over 1,200 videos here that I can, that can be easily turned into audio tracks and uploaded on a platform like Spotify in some time, right? This could take months, but I have somebody who helps me, and it's just familiar ties. They're not paid for it, but since it contributes to the whole thing, right? I could easily do it, right? With all due time. You know that I'm patient, because if you have followed me over the years and you consider what I've been doing here, well, I can assure it does take patience. And fortunately, I am a patient, but at least for certain things like this ones and long-term projects, I am absolutely in for it. So podcasting is interesting, right? For the simple reason that I understand the interest, the intrigue. I don't understand, frankly, why somebody would use specifically podcast, because I don't have the experience to distinguish the accessibility, I believe, of this content from a more technological standpoint. You should know that, and this will explain it, because you should know that I don't own, for example, even a phone with internet on. It may seem shocking. And probably this fits a bit of the homemade style to make my videos, which are effectively podcasts, right? Just with a bit of pictures, and in part clickbaiting, but also because they are objectively, I put always images that are pertinent historically to the same level of of depth that I make properly the vocal content. So I care about that too. Podcasts are something different, but I realize people listen to podcasts, in fact, and can listen to my content at this point in a much more flexible way. You don't have to connect to YouTube. Here there are ads. It's not, some of you told me, I want to listen to this in the car while I go to work. Well, I hope you don't listen to my videos on, how to charge into an enemy line while you're driving a car or something like that. Or I know there are people who said that they are relaxed listening about, the Romans exterminating, the Gauls, the Caesar campaigns before going to sleep, which I found quite disturbing, but also quite, interesting, because that means that I can arrive to impact a person's existence to that level. And I understand the fascination in general with listening to somebody who was here daily. I don't believe this. I mean, of course, it's the content, it's history, it's the things it's the topic I choose. It's probably also the way I criticize them. Some can't stand me. Probably others are maybe just fascinated with it. But I believe it's also about some kind of human closeness, right? That I don't close distances with you more than much, but the fact that I'm here, it's somewhat also I owe it to you in the measure in which you support me, you have made this thing grow. So I see the thing as if we were doing it together, and objectively this is the case, because if the channel as such, right, is measured through subscribers, through watch line, that's what you make. Right, I never re-listen to things I say. Never, I don't care fundamentally. I just speak here and do it. So I'm fascinated with the idea of and I do, because I followed a very few YouTube channels back in the day about history, and then I got bored with them because they wouldn't quite express the things that partly, in fact, I'm expressing here. I mostly listen to political commentaries nowadays, and they are a company for me. right? I know that there are lots of people out there for some reason are either maybe not alone, but maybe they feel lonely. Maybe they don't have like a window on certain aspects they would like to take in consideration. So these things are helpful, right? They are helpful to stabilize. I can tell you that the routine that the Schwerpunkt provides me with is stabilizing, right? I don't have like I've had recently some psychological issues. I hope nothing turning too serious, but over the years I realized that this, together with other things I do for work and so on, has structured me also internally in a way that I can and I do react better to things that happen. Fortunately, never got serious issues, but I realized that I've developed a way to cope with things that made me grow, right? Even just commenting the Filmkriege or talking about history, having this comparative interest, right? It may be that Schwerpunkt was a more formative activity than my doctoral research, right? And and in fact I benefited highly from it, because I think that if I hadn't done this, I would have made a worse work, and that this is not true in the same amount, which however surely existed in lesser part in the other way around, right? For the PhD for Schwerpunkt, all right? And of course, yes, I mean there is life experience in it. There are things that I learned in the previous years, and I hope to improve over time, because this thing was dramatically helpful to me, right? And that's the reason why I say I don't measure it just it's money that can always be helpful where in another. I do it because I know the potential that this has, and I've seen it growing over time. And now I am restructuring the channel. I had basically to take down the older part of the older videos and re-uploading them, which has essentially lowered dramatically the plateau of algorithmic views that I got, right? But the channel kept growing, right? And it will keep growing at that point, right? Because that will be it has reached the bottom round, right? Because that every day I had like I went by order of importance of the videos in terms of daily watch length, right? So for the first months, I taken down and re-uploaded the videos that had accumulated more views, likes, and YouTube algorithm. These were the videos that had entered successfully the YouTube algorithm mechanism, and so all the the majority of the views that I regularly got automatically, so not from the subscribers that remain there. In fact, the economical income that measures mostly that fidelization, because it's mostly people who watch intensively, I think, has not changed the same way. And I thank you for that, because it means that you weren't shattered by this, in spite of having to re-upload all this new stuff. So I'm sorry for the inconvenience, but we talked about this, and I think it was for the very existence of the channel. But it will keep growing again. Especially last year, I witnessed a very important growth, right? That could easily escalate given this critical mass idea that I saw starting to work, right? So actually, I believe the Schwerpunkt will rise very fast at some point. I'm more than sure about this, considering the algorithm, the dynamics, and all. So this is what actually made me think, together with your requests, about podcasting, because it turned out, at least I've seen that statistically, there is a greater profitability of, I don't remember whether stats were based on Spotify just, but on podcasting in general, than YouTube. That is to say, even it was calculated in terms of income, right? But I suppose it has something to do with properly the intensity through which the podcast can, in fact, permeate somebody's mind through the aforementioned accessibility dynamics compared to YouTube, right? So what I would like to know specifically for you to answer me, if you think that it can help, is exactly what it works like to get on Spotify, and to choosing a so-called host for sending your your podcast out there, right? So basically, as far as I've understood, because I searched on the internet by myself. Maybe I missed the article that explained this step by step, but these are all kind of clickbaiting articles that are just, do you want to start a podcast? Wow, look at this, you can do it, it's so cool, but it all depends on what you want to do, and so good luck, right? They don't explain you anything concretely about what it is. And specifically about podcasts, I would like to know how this hosting mechanism actually works. That is to say, how do I have to pay these guys, and in which measure before, right, a content like mine can take off, right? And I ask you this specifically, and I ask you especially if you have this, an experience in podcasting and Spotify specifically, because I would like to understand how much, given that these sites exist because they make money on your work at the end of the day, how do you think that my content and the amount of it, that again, this will be in a few time in the 1200, right? And 1200 history podcasts can last even on an average of 1 hour long at this point. And how can they grow, right? Normally, or even just it's again, it's not predictable, but it can be more or less understood, right? With YouTube, I was aware that it would be hard, but that as long as I would have continued doing it, it would have happened, because it was somewhat mathematical, right? And considering also from my side what I knew I would be telling. So, given that you know my content here, and that you, that if you have this understanding of podcasting, I would like to hear from you. What's your opinion about the convenience of this all? How much should I approximately spend? Like, how does this thing work? Is there something that I have to constantly pay to these people for hosting me stuff? Banal things, like not really understanding the difference between, I don't know, do I have to pay for every podcast I upload, or is it a fixed standard? But technically, how much is this? How much they take you away before you can take off in a decent way, right? Because I believe, after all, that my content is much better suited for podcasting than for YouTube, right? So if I'm satisfied about what is happening on YouTube, I can't think that that it would be better on Spotify. Another thing that I was imagining is how convenient it is, given that I have a YouTube channel, meaning that some of you at this point would leave for Spotify, right? So I would get less views on YouTube, and also that is kind of unpredictable how many. But at the same time, it would probably be convenient in the same way on Spotify, right? I'm not saying I will probably never abandon YouTube, because I don't. Let's say that there is I established a certain connection here that is important for YouTube itself, right? Because it's a place where you want things to be out there. In fact, more or less successful creators, that's how they call them, normally do that. They have YouTube, they have other, they have podcasts and so on. I've seen also there are different podcasts, I don't know, platforms, that you may say, well, you know what, I believe that more than maybe Spotify or any other place, maybe the best would be this specific podcast platform. I of course can't spot 1 mile away, from 1 mile away, whether that's just promoting a certain platform rather than another, so please don't send me spam or things like these. I'm also not really hungry for money or for views. I'm not doing this because I am desperate for getting more things. It's just I arrived to a stage of development of this content making for which I realized, wait a second, right? How you waited for monetizing on YouTube, which is also actually advised by saying YouTube, and I did it just because they started inserting ads unbeknownst to me, as you know. At this point, I may profit also from a podcasting platform as well. I don't hide that if, let's assume for some odd reason, maybe on a podcast platform, I make an astonishing success or something, which I doubt, but still, maybe in a greater fashion in YouTube. I will remain on both as long as something is really radically successful, maybe just on one side. At that point, I could just even pay somebody for uploading stuff in my place, but that's not going to happen realistically at this point. But I really mean that I'm interested in also what the podcasting experience is. It's just I don't like, this is the point I'm trying to make, I don't like at all people who say, well, first we give you money, then you can start, and then good luck, right? Because I know that behind that there is naturally a free, it's it's a perfectly capitalist entrepreneurial way of doing it, and it's a I engage in a consensual deal, legally speaking. There is nothing controversial about that. It's just that I know that it's a bit like YouTube, in spite of the dynamic, right? They give you just the amount that they make money through for you to be there, right? More than you. So I'm used to this kind of economical thinking, and at some point, yes, they have the platform. It's right? It's just I don't understand what technically it is, this hosting system on Spotify, right? It's as if there were servers or something like that, fundamentally managed by somebody who, I don't know even how, except essentially, and you have to choose amongst. And that's also another thing that I would like to know. Who should I choose and why when I get there among the various hosts for uploading my content? What's the point? Is it just like a completely entrepreneurial thing? But is there like the different hosts are maybe more into certain topics rather than others? How does it work? What is that about, right? What's behind that, economically speaking? Because I'm interested in also what's their motivation for it and how much I can profit from that, and especially, yes, how much and how do I have to pay in order to start that, right? Because even if it's irrational, I believe I have a great resistance to certain things, right? Because I believe that if my content is convenient, they should pay me first to get there, right? It's an invert. Of course, it doesn't make much sense, but it's still an option, meaning that if eventually those people would pay, of course, for their most successful, content makers to choose them, right? So since I absolutely don't have I'm absolutely confident about what I'm doing, about the quality of what I'm doing, I believe that I deserve also to maintain, ideally, a negotiational balance with this system altogether, right? It doesn't cost anything to me to just remain on YouTube and treating this the way I've always done, right? So in order to convince me, because this is your chance for you to convince me at the same time to make podcasts proper there, to upload them there at least, is why should I do it, right? Why me, not a random guy like Schwerpunkt, who makes this kind of content, should go there and upload, and where and how, right? You have to convince me about that, because I still don't know enough to understand how it works there. So that's why you are requested at this point. And so I understand that. I understand that such content is important for people. It can, just sitting there and listening to the stories or whatever I say, it can be good, and it could be to the benefit of the broader community of Schwerpunkt, his followers, and what this thing can be. And I tell you this, that having seen how it really goes, there are some concerns about this. First of all, I trust YouTube up to a certain point to be here, to stay around as the main video sharing platform in the world. Doesn't matter whether other sites like TikTok have, but that's different. It's different content and different. But I think that as long as millennials are going to stay around, there will always be somebody watching YouTube in a sense, right? And so this is important to me. At the same time, it's also an important economical strategy just to differentiate, right? To sectorialize on the base of investment. And so Spotify at this point is the new thing, right? I think it's much more volatile than YouTube is, considering what it is practically. And that's part of the reason why I'm distrustful even about the money part. I mean, I know it's irrational because, again, the entire world is there, so there is evidently a reason which confirms it by itself, right? The advantage of it. But I just don't know whether my specific content would be. But because, as far as I understand, there's mostly music on there, right? They also had some, I've seen legal cases where they had uploaded literally, I don't know, there was somebody having like hundreds of millions of views just by uploading stuff they had stolen from YouTube. And in fact, by the way, I will tell you this, that I will be not lenient at all against anybody who has maybe uploaded my own content there, which I don't think has happened. But here, whatever you put on the internet, basically it's going to be swallowed in a way or another, and you don't know where it's going to go. I know that there is somebody here who told me that he was just essentially downloading the audio tracks from my videos, and okay, right, I knew that these things could happen. It's not a big deal. It's just that, of course, it's easy, I guess, also to find literally everything there. And the question also that it's a bit more like my curiosity, because as you have noticed, I am essentially systematizing ever more the content. That is, I've been creating lots of new playlists. So that's obviously, of course, for attracting more people, because on YouTube, literally, you can make as many as you want. So the more you have, the more you attract, right? And it's also overlooked in a sense. And since I've made so many videos, that's the best thing to do, because of course many videos are bit in multiple playlists at the same time. So maybe you watch different things. You may come across the same thing if you have already watched from somewhere else, but it's pertinent to the topic, right? Because there are different type of topics that intertwine. I would like to know, how does Spotify work in this sense? Like, do you have anything like categories, like a bit? I know it has nothing to do with that, but is it like Reddit, where, I don't know, there is like one specific... No, Reddit actually doesn't have... It was like Yahoo back in the day, where you had, all the various categories, I don't know, sport, history, movies, things like these. And how do you search something on Spotify, right? Of course, here there is a brand, let's say there is Schwerpunkt, so somebody would find me in a way or another. You would find me because at that point I would be there. But like, if some random person is searching for, let's say, some of my top searched content on YouTube, for example, like the Scythians and the Sarmatians, or the Merovingian Franks, right? What's the tool of research there? Just literally the name among the billions and trillions of tracks that are being uploaded, or is it are there categories? Are there certain things for which you can, that in that sector, more or less, there are those podcasters, and it's it? Because that would be quite interesting and convenient, because if the answer is yes, which I doubt, by the way, because I think the mechanism is completely different, I think there are not so many people who make the same thing I do, right? Paradoxically, on YouTube, I get penalized by the fact that my video sucks, right? And the audio maybe is not also this great much, given my linguistic skills and so on. But let's say at least I created so much niche, let's say specific content, that I'm legitimately the only person talking about certain things in the whole internet, not just on YouTube, right? So I wonder whether on Spotify this uniqueness of certain topics would actually be a plus, or people just don't give a damn because they're there just to listen to music most of the times, and not to have a particularly long engagement. Because this is also the point of the podcast, that the podcast is successful the more it's listened to at length, right? So I know that there are other platforms where there are, more, let's call them intellectually oriented podcasts, right? Like my ones would be, even though I hate to be considered an intellectual in the first place, but for many that this is allegedly so. But that we're at that point, people would be there just more to listen, to have this kind of, broader acculturation or self-education through this listening to this recording. And in this sense, is it something that on Spotify I can hope to find in the same way, and or instead, where would I find something better? Right, that's another point that I'm concerned about, because literally, that my content again is very, very structured, even if it doesn't look so. And at that point, I believe that most people come across my content randomly, and it's fine. But eventually, right? So it's normal that people began to. But eventually, maybe I know that some of you discovered me randomly. Then you realize that I'm plenty of videos, that I'm plenty of playlists that you can search through them, and that you can literally systematize your listening for years, because I put out so much content that there is no way somebody can finish it in time before that time. Or it doesn't matter, because on Spotify, at the end of the day, people just listen to what you say every day more, rather than going to search for your older content. I absolutely have no idea of how it works. Like, if, for example, I believe you have a sort of an account there, right? So is this account like does it have a face? Like is it a profile, in the sense that you click on it, and then if I wanted to systematize my own content, you will find it there? Or is there like a broader ocean where you will just find my random content, right? Like on Twitter, let's say, and if you're lucky, you just fish randomly among people, and then you get followers. And how does it work? I don't really know, and I'm very curious about this, simply because I haven't found anybody on the internet that actually provides some satisfactory answer to these things. And these instead are very important to me, because I like to keep things under control all the time. And I can track them, I can manage them, I can essentially plan my strategy, if you want. And so that's very important for me, and I think it could also be a way to, like, if it's done well, can help to the cause, right? I'm sure there are other things that I could I don't know what here could be. I don't know. Yes, that's that other thing too. Like, that I already addressed before. Do you think that opening, going on Spotify would in the meanwhile kind of damage my YouTube views or something like that? Because again, that's YouTube works in a way that is like a black hole, right? With your videos, they acquire gravitational mass over time. So if people stop watching watch less in interest of time, you have a lower traffic, the channel will take longer to boom, right? Whereas if I keep all the views concentrated just on YouTube, there is a greater chance for people just to come here and to watch my content there, and therefore making the algorithm eventually making my views expand further as it's been going on. So this is also another important aspect, because if the idea is that I can't be successful just like there are different options. Like, I can be successful on both places, kind of as if whether I upload on both of them the same content wouldn't actually affect the respective traffic on either places, or is there some interference? Or because my fear is that I'm to struggle to make YouTube and Spotify grow, whereas I could have done better by just being on one of them, and just make first that grow, instead of waiting in relative terms for the both things to grow separately. Albeit, I basically split just my views among them, and therefore I make them respectively being less fast in rise than they should be. So this is another concern, and I think it's legitimate. Yeah, this is my thing. I can tell you that back in the day, I even had a Facebook. I still have a Facebook page, but I don't post there anymore. For the simple odd reason that since I still have Windows XP, literally, because I hate everything came later, and I absolutely don't want to change it. I have other operative systems on the other computer, but I don't use it. I I can't, like, Facebook's become terrible because it's very slow. Also, YouTube is very slow, so I'm sure. But I mean, I'm not there clicking all the time, right? That's why I expanded. For example, I went on Twitter, just sharing my videos, and I have just 26 followers at this point. It's not a big deal, but still, I've seen that it's dramatically easy sometimes to acquire more views or more subscribers, more followers there than I thought it would be, even on Facebook. So I don't know, there are certain things that you have to consider also in terms of my own personal time, because the more I expand on different things, and the more that takes time for me to do it, right? So what I spent before for a single video, now I spend maybe twice of the time, right? And this is also another thing that I'm not particularly fond of in general, but I also have to think bigger. Like, the more I work now, and the better, the more I will harvest later. Then I would like maybe to ask you a philosophical question regarding to these things, because as you understand, I'm a bit of a reactionary by character. I'm refractory to change, things like these. So I tend to think a lot before I do these things, too much theoretically, just as an excuse eventually not to do it. But instead, I know I should do this. That's why I'm asking. But in general, right, and this is just my bias that you understood from before, do you think that there is anything, I don't know, I wouldn't say morally reproachable, or let's say, but say in really even just uploading something on Spotify rather than not in or other podcast platform, meaning it's like with YouTube, right? Explain myself better. YouTube had never been particularly sympathetic to me, right? I've always understood what they do, how they do it, and I think it's squishy, it's shady, and I don't like what it is, right? But it's just the only place where, at least the better place I could think of where to share this stuff. And it turns out I've accomplished something at the end of the day. So which depends on my personal standards or whatever, the importance I attribute it to this one. But of course, I have some moral scruple about this. First of all, because I depend on YouTube. Secondly, because I know, in fact, what they do, and I don't like it more than much. But let's say, do you think that all this podcasting booming, is it just for kids to share songs, or is it really a serious thing? Because as far as I've understood, it's like for most things, like the most successful platforms, a bit in every field, are the ones that are simpler, right? So the ones where, of course, there is more competition, more challenge. But at the same time, in theory, if there's something qualitative about the things you do, should emerge and should make the largest and truest, say, success in a sense. Whereas there are those, less famous things, because that platforms that actually require you to pay, right, a lot, but they tell you, well, but this is the place where all the, the intellectuals listen to, their thing. And I believe those are losers, frankly, because they, if that's measured properly on the base of how many people they have, right? I know that our other podcasting platforms are properly more oriented in that sense, but if Spotify boomed, I think it's because, and it's the first one, it's because it kind of has this seducing dynamic that, it's like a maelstrom that you could be swallowed by, but you don't have any specific certainty on how it's gonna fare. Like sometimes on YouTube too, I got frustrated because I think that after all, yes, this may not be the perfect my content may not have the perfect, may find not the perfect format on YouTube to be shared, and that's why I'm interested in podcasting as well. But let's say at the same time, I realize that those who want just lots of views immediately are just imbeciles, right? That actually, if you're a persevering person and you're constant and you build a trust, it's all about moral forces also in here. You're going to attract that kind of attention. So these are important things for me to understand, right? So again, if you answer, please don't make like, I appreciate long answers, right? The chances are that the more information you provide me with, the more you have chances to win the contest, let's say. But be aware that I'm not interested in just the quantity of information, but the quality of it. That is to say, you don't have to make me the prehistory of podcasting to explain to me how, I don't know, Spotify works and whether it's worth it or not. Right? You have to be very, very precise about, if you say something that you must know it. It doesn't have to be speculation. Albeit, I know there is a lot of unpredictability in such things, but it should be concretely about the mechanism for what you have spotted it works like there, and whether you think it's a good way to run. So I don't need supporting messages, I don't need sympathetic messages, I don't need encouragement, I don't need that. I need an explanation of those things I ask regarding specifically Spotify, because I believe after all it's the best option, and that I would have an important impact at some point if I upload really 1,200 tracks, right? And somebody will surely be listening to me, and I could profit from that, right? So, but I need to know essentially those things. How do I get started regarding the host's choice, and how much and what kind, how much money they ask me for which reason? Why are they different from one another? What is my content best suited for? Secondly, whether do you think there is any kind of of benefit from a YouTuber that shares his content only through YouTube at this point to open a Spotify account, I presume, for the same health of the channel in itself on YouTube, which is a kind of a non-question. I realize that. I just think, how do you predict that the two things can interfere with each other? Let's say, aside from being negative or positive, I don't know. And whether there is some broader consideration, that is to say, maybe, no man, I know that there are so many people who are interested maybe in podcasting, but maybe in your case it's maybe it's not necessary, which I doubt, because again, I believe that actually I would have better started podcasts rather than YouTube videos at some point, but maybe there's some reason that I can't see, that I still don't know about, and that may be just worth considering in a broader, let's say, philosophical sense, right? And so I'd appreciate this thing. So for the contest, like, so write comments here, and or you can message me on my email or whatever, and I will be reading them for, say, 10 days or something like that. Then I will choose one answer, and if you're interested, we can talk about it privately, meaning that if I see that you really know much about what you're talking about, I would like to speak to you privately so that we can talk it bit more thoroughly, and I can ask you for some more advice. And for the rest, of course, I appreciate everybody who I will maybe make single questions to you in the process. But again, I do this because many of you really ask me let's say the traffic increased, it was like a bit of pasting copy and say, why aren't you on Spotify? Why aren't you on Spotify? As if Spotify was and that's why I don't like mostly trends like this. But I realized that it made me useful for some reason, that if there are people who come to ask me such a thing, it's probably because they would listen to me there. So, and they're probably more than what I can see. So, of course, I care for my audience also, not to disappoint, not to lose contact, because that's what I can, of course, benefit from, and you can benefit from at that same level. And I'll tell you this at the end. I've said it at some other points while looking at how things are going, that in general, let's say I can't say I have big plans for Schwerpunkt, but the idea is that we can really make something big here, right? I'm not really, I don't want really to sound like the phenomena freak kind of, but I think that what I'm doing here in its encyclopedical aim, because that's fundamentally the criterion that stands behind the whole thing, even though there is a broader reflection and there is a broader purpose, is somewhat unique in its kind, right? The other channels that talk a bit about my own topic are either maybe some are also better properly in information at some point, but they are confined to that, right? To maybe the time, the place, the topic, right? There are so many YouTube channels that flourished just because not much of animation. Sometimes it's also information that is good, but that you realize they make videos mostly because they catch people's attention relatively to certain popularized and allegedly popularizing sounding almost topics that do have, let's say, maybe, let's go find the the elite taste about, I don't know, let's talk about this special the special Hellenistic unit that millennials have heard from Total War video games, and let's pretend we are historians that can really frame that into an art of war, let's say, broad horizon dimension, but let's say they stop there, right? Let's say what I think that my channel is, let's say my content in general is different from, is that I'm not here to amaze you with the visual, or the, maybe just because I talk about uncommon things. It's the fact that I arrive to a point in my personal path as a historian, but just as a, like, somebody who likes to learn history more than else, for which, and military history specifically, for which I really have gotten the essentials of how to frame and to criticize military history in a diachronic and comparative way. That is to say, I can give a decently satisfactory dimension to most military phenomena that happen throughout history without saying something dramatically idiotic, right? It's which is, believe me, it's extremely rare, right? Because everything I read or see or watch at this point is somehow rigged, right? It's somehow rigged because maybe you have the successful channel that doesn't even care about trying anymore, right? These other ones that are mostly visually oriented, others that actually make good historical points, but maybe just they stop at a certain age or a certain context, and they're just maybe normal historians. I don't know, honestly, any kind of historian of the art of war on YouTube, right? I've tried hard, right? You would say, but there are, no, I will not make names, but honestly, not even those that like that concentrate specifically on military history have that level of systematized criticism in art of war terms. That is to say, they grab a bunch of information from good material and they put it together to make the good video. But if they were to explain alone certain things and why they happen, what's the inherent logic behind that, or making a bit just of dialectical framing of why things are one or another, really not, right? It's like coming, and I see it from the audience. I mean, every YouTuber can relate. Somewhat it's frustrating to see that you make maybe 1 hour video long content that is aimed at explaining comprehensively a thing, and first of all, there are some certain people who just don't have either they just don't understand what you're talking about, because either they have a very short attention span, which is very common on YouTube and among the younger people, but especially in this time seemingly, and so that they don't even care about what you're actually talking about, because they don't understand it, right? And so you realize they arrive here, they want to participate to a debate, and basically they comment with things that make you understand that they haven't even understood what you said in the first 5 minutes, because they don't care anything about learning actual things, making a mental effort. I'm perfectly aware that my content is not for everybody, right? My content is often even polemical, and subtly so, because believe me, in everything I do, it's as if I was struggling for something. Like I don't, I keep things under control, but the points I make are always deeply motivated, right? I don't say things because I have just a worldview which I need to assert by itself. It's because I come from, let's say, some experience that showed me how things are substantially in a certain way rather than another, and why this is not seen, and why this is a problem, why things could be better if it was understood for the way it is for real, right? And this is a bit the problem we all have. But one thing is being content just with, somebody who deludes you with the idea that there's just one factor in an overwhelmingly complex system, and at that point that they just, whatever they say has no meaning, because if the complexity of the system and the scientific frameability and analysis of it are not put on the fore all the time for what they concretely are, not just for making relativism, on the contrary, making the exact opposite, that analysis has no value. That it's not like Sphinx was saying last time. It was last day I was making that answer about how much the syrup impacted cavalry tactics. Historically, it was all the whole video was pivoted around the fact that, of course, it had a very marginal impact in relative terms, considering the complexity of military systems and of armies and combat and intervene. There was the guy who arrives and in 1066 the Normans has just a great advantage over the Anglo-Saxons because of the syrup. Yes, as if they weren't broken all the time. They charged against their shield walls until they broke it to come down the hill in turn, right? It's a huge advantage. Just, you see how easy it is to dialectically debunk, right? I spent 1 hour to explain that, and it would be just easy to do that. Instead, I provide you with a whole extensive explanation. You can disagree with that, but the point is that why, right? Because you are a person and I am another, and since you don't understand what I'm talking about, you must be the right one and I must be the wrong one. Unfortunately, I can tell you that scientifically, it doesn't work like this. Right, so that's why I thought about podcasting, because podcasting is a way to acquaint people just more deeply to the value of understanding, the value of making a mental effort, of properly of getting used to the broader dialect for what it is, right? And this goes at so many levels, right? That now I made the example of the stirrup. But that I studied von Clausewitz, and that this is, in my opinion, not such a huge achievement. Like the greatest achievement is actually having studied history, having studied the von Clausewitz, because that's exactly what he wanted, right? So that is not championing some author just because he wrote something, but understanding why that something is useful and what difference it makes when you approach reality. right? So I also know that I'm talking to an audience that is prevalently coming from a specific cultural background. Most of you are Americans, and or mostly also coming from, well, the other nationalities in order are British, German, Australian, Italian, and it's mostly like Europeans eventually, but like Americans are like 50% like of the watch length, so you're overwhelmingly, disproportionately, and luckily so. Like, I'm honored, I'm flattered by that. As for any other country, by the way, but I understand that this is important also for in fact who you are, meaning that if I knew that I were talking just to Russians, for example, I would have a different, I would have the same opinions, but I would explain them in a different way, right? So I also try to adjust to a certain standard. Then in the case of the United States is also what, largely you can take as a Western standard, in a sense, that you can deem to be satisfactory, not to be, hampered by significant, faults, or of course there are certain things that do not work in, I don't know, here in Europe, that do not work in the United States, and so on. And you know what my opinion is about the rest of the world in general. But it's important for me to make a difference, right? A positive difference through the things I say. So it's obvious that, for example, I don't know, in the United States, I've seen a lot of a lot of things. But for example, the one that struck me the most is the concept of leadership. Right, there is an enormous debate about leadership. I don't know how many books have been printed to just write about leadership, and it's just going in circle most of the time. It's like the disproportionate passion for Far East Asia, and the alleged, in fact, the myth, to be honest, that there was this kind of deep philosophical, sapiential tradition about even strategical things because of Sun Tzu and all that. That's all typical. That comes from from a very specific historical context, right? Especially during the Cold War, but also before. But in general, it's all product of history, and it's important to frame it through certain ideas, exactly because that will debunk them in a way that is not just. That is universal in nature, that it works for everybody, right? When you understand that Asia, especially in its communist dimension, actually was not just indoctrinated to communism, Marxism, that, for that matter, is it was invented in the West, but also that the communist regimes in East Asia were all Clausewitzian in culture, right? And even just, again, dialectically present the thing by showing how even what you think your enemy be something, relatively, exotic, or and surely provided with some, different mindset, etc., but still making use, after all, of a Western tool through which, had even been able to essentially contrast you effectively, is a big deal, right? Because it already poses you in front of that mental elasticity and openness that it seems to me Westerners, so we are sclerotizing into, when we are actually the ones who created the best, and we don't even read it anymore. Von Clausewitz is just the pinnacle of this, because if you study The Art of War, that's like the Bible. You cannot do without that. Like, it's impossible by definition. It has nothing to do with personal opinions. This is the beauty of it. You say, but you are sclerotizing now. I'm not sclerotizing, because you can demonstrate that. And sclerotizing means that you just buy that because you think that name is famous, and it's not. Like, that's the same reason why there are people who think that Little Hart or Keegan are military competent people. Right, for real, right? In my environment, it's like this is a joke, right? Also a declaration of intellectual, dramatic intellectual shortcoming. But again, the world out there, and lots of kids, a lot of people, like also my age, not really kids anymore, unfortunately, think, and they think wrong, and that's a problem, because we pay collectively for the cost of it. So that's the inherent message that I actually put out here. And I'm actually developing it at levels that somehow impress me. There is a path that I followed. Right at the beginning of Schwerpunkt, it wasn't like this. There were certain things that I didn't understand. Now it's through just this prolonged exercise that I realized them. And I'm even scared by the power of such realizations, because I haven't been completely vocal about them. But I will probably progress in this if I don't have some, mental collapse given my sentimental misfortunes. That I think it's a purpose, right? It's a real purpose that can really make something good here, and to go big in a sense, because, well, I can't really explain it now. But it's in many ways what you should have already. I think many of you, even if I trust always the silent majority in a sense, because from the amount of people who comment, sometimes say again the thing I said before, they just don't get it, right? You realize that they appreciate what you do, that they understand something, but they just don't get it, right? They don't even start to get it, because maybe I don't explain myself particularly well, or think that what I'm saying is irrelevant, or you disagree with that for some reason. But the truth is that, through the thing you say, you just lack that logical connection that I was explaining in the video, right? And I give you a not easy to follow, but this is not much of the point in itself. The point in itself is be willing to make that effort. And if you don't do that, there is no magical podcast, YouTube, or whatever that will teach you, because you have to work it yourself, right? We still haven't invented a form of education where people just are exposed passively to something, their brain just, becomes smart instantly. It doesn't work like that. That's why, again, I think that a podcast would have such a strong seminal power in providing with that kind of almost indoctrination, like to be brutal about the idea. Like, properly, you have to have that mental clarity before approaching the thing. Otherwise, it's time lost. And so this is what I hope to expand on, because, again, I can make the history video that talks to you about that, that unit in that time in history, and I can make the list of it. But what this channel is worth to be listened for, and otherwise I tell you, like, if you don't see it, don't follow me, because I prefer it. Like, honestly, I would like all the people who do not get it, either to try to get it, of course, but which presumably whoever listens tries in a certain measure. But if you really don't get it, or you think that this is not why you should be here, do not listen to me, because you're paying your time, your resources, you're paying ads to me. So you're literally paying for something that you may not get. It may be, again, it's maybe my fault as well, because I am the one who should provide with that information. But if that's not the goal, if you don't see the glue that keeps together all the videos I've made, then they are 1,200. There is something wrong. There is something seriously missed that is the single most important thing. Because one statement that I make in one video, I give you it's tricky. It is tricky, because you may have arrived here just last week and not having the palest idea of what I'm doing here. But this is the reason for which, in theory, you should go check the other videos and understand why, right? If you don't want to listen all the properly the history-based videos, there is the Historian playlist where I normally made all the various. It originally started for talking about broader philosophical considerations, philosophically broadly meant. Also about the channel updates, where I'm going with this, what kind of reflections I make, and some other also theoretical topics about the art of war and so on. So those are very useful, because they show you in a chronological order, given that I haven't re-uploaded them because they are, all copyright okay. They are like very explicative of what I'm doing here. What's the point? Naturally, the best thing would be to study the Filmkriege, and that they have also this dramatic playlist of more than 200 episodes that I dedicated to the reading and commentary of the entire Funky game, though I stopped to like 2/3 now, 3/4 almost. At some point now I have to re-upload this other material in the meanwhile, but at some point hopefully I will finish it. But that is the sap of the channel. Of course nobody watches them, right? Nobody ever watched them. Every time I make a Von Clausewitz video, people just, don't watch it. I see it because I have the stats here of every video that, in interest of time, like they just don't follow it. And that gives me the measure of the shortcoming of a civilization at the end of the day, because that has barely to do with what I say, because I'm the same person, right? So even if I explain things badly, this is uniform for everything, right? So this doesn't absolutely answer, has nothing to do with with the topic. And so when I realized that the Von Clausewitz videos went deserted by a half of 2/3 compared to the others on average, well, I know that you're not here for that, and that's bad, right? Because again, the channel is exclusively, essentially, and fundamentally and exquisitely about that. So it cannot be all the other content. That's why I get this cognitive dissonance sometimes from people that even listen to my, that subscribe and appreciate, but you understand from certain comments that they even think I said exactly the opposite of what they think I said. It's embarrassing sometimes. I don't point it out because I don't have I don't care, but that's their problem. But the question is, again, how can we improve, even through the format, this awareness, right? So it's unfortunate. I know that there are other dynamics. This is not entirely a matter of choice. It's also a matter of how the algorithm renders certain videos visible rather than others. These considerations, however, I matured mostly on probably the direct views that I get every time I upload. So that tells me, at least in terms of subscribers' taste, what's the deal. And again, it's a bit disheartening at time, but just the fact that somebody listened to the others, it's very meaningful to me, because again, this is not about me. This is about something greater than ourselves, right? And until I won't properly talk about it, it won't be clear. So the more we spread this content, and the better it's gonna go. And I can assure you that it's going to go well. Some of you say, but you've been making these videos for 3 years now, and more, that's 1,200. You still have 4,600 subscribers. But yeah, I mean, I am aware of that. But there was, again, a brutal acceleration that I cut short 2 months ago because of this copyright reason. Because again, I never received a single claim or copyright strike or anything of that. But I was using objectively copyright material, blurred. Surely there was some fair content nature to it, but it's such a gray area that I didn't want to risk anything. There are still people who ask me, but why are all these re-uploads? Well, if you go back in the Easter Rain playlist, you will see and know why I've done it. So so everything is okay, but again, I cut that algorithmic base that was making the channel actually booming. I was receiving, like, by the end of this year, if I had continued, I would have passed from like 2,000 to 6,000 subscribers. So it was a massive growth, right? And it was accelerating blatantly, right? And it will keep accelerating. I see that nothing's gone down aside from the algorithmic views, the algorithmic plateau, right? The subscribers have kept increasing. Even the incomes have remained the same. So I see that you're hanging in there. You're wired to this. For one way or another, you appreciate it. You tolerate me. It's fantastic when I get messages like, comments like by people who I see that are here, that are listening regularly, say, "Yeah, finally something I agree with you." Well, it's a great compliment, because if you are here disagreeing with me, normally, and you keep following, oh my God, like, they must be the worst. But you must have a lot of stomach for that. So evidently, I'm actually happy of that, because jokes aside, it means that after all, I say something thought prerogative. So that the point that even if you disagree with me, you still follow me, that's a big deal, really. That's exactly, in a sense, what I'm searching for, because you know, that's exactly what exposing to different ideas that are conflictual forces you to find out a settlement, right? And because again, we are not moral relativists, we know that there is a truth out there. It's just we're struggling to find which, to grow closer to it, not to actually have it. So again, if you think that I should be doing podcasting, preferably on Spotify, as far as I understand, please tell me how that mechanically works. I need to know specifically the specifics of it, the specifics of the cost, and the specifics of the dynamic, and in general, your opinion, your judgment on whether my content would be fit for it or not. And so whether this makes sense in a broader strategic sense. And the objective for that matter is expanding the views as much as possible, right? That's crucial in all, and it can come through both YouTube and Spotify. Like, it doesn't have to be preferentially one of the two, but as long as if it does accelerate them, and if it does add them in absolute terms over time, like, yes, I mean, preferably, let's say, in an exponential sense, but let's say having such an important following, yeah. I would like to know how, to get any advice, any kind of consideration is helpful. So again, I will be reading your answers if there are going to be any, and then if you want, like, the person who I have chosen to have, it seems to me the most thought-provoking, the one who knows more about this, and I can ask further. We can I invite you to talk with me privately so that I can ask you something more, and you can ask something, about Schwerpunkt if you're curious or anything, just as a prize, let's say, for providing me with information. Alright, so for now, I stop it here. I just hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did, please share it. Otherwise, leave a like or subscribe to my channel if you're interested in my upcoming content. And for now, I thank you heartily for listening to me. I wish you a nice time and see you next time. Bye.